Good morning.
Hey guys.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Just before we start, who's the numpty who had YouTube open whilst everything was playing? Because I could hear it repeating.
Probably me.
No, I don't think so.
Womp, 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 womp,
Yeah,
womp.
that was me, probably.
No, I think it was Heath.
Heath?
Yeah, blame Heath.
Could have been Heath.
I was just starting to hear it replay, and there was a bit of a delay, and I was going, all right, I'm not going to say anything, but...
It's my iPad that was laying right here next to my phone, so that's probably what you were hearing.
Was it really?
My bad.
No, actually, no, that's why we had more than that, because I had the volume on mine up, too, and I'm like, turn it down! So we had both of them going, so we had two double loops.
There you go. Stereo.
Well, speaking of errors and mistakes and things like that, today we're talking about track. More specifically, what have you learned from laying track? Any mistakes? How different is your track from your original plan, etc.?
I could write a book.
Yeah. What are your techniques for laying track? I mean, what kind of track do you use? Sectional? Do you use flex track? Do you hand lay like I do? Do you, what kind do you use? And why do you use that? And how do you like it?
Fastening track down. I've seen a lot of different ways of fastening stuff down too. Different kinds of glues and such.
Yeah, the thing that kind of sparked this subject today was this section of my layout that I had laid already. I straightened this part out. You can see the new ties back here. I had a pretty good kink in here because I got real lazy on this turnout, which is a left-hand dual turnout. I had a right-hand dual in here. And so I had it with the straight coming through, and it would come way over here on this side, and then I had to come back with it. And I didn't like it when I put it in there, and I should not have done that. I should have just built another turnout. But I was in a hurry to get the track down and stuff, and I was in here last weekend or weekend before last, and looking at it going, that needs to be straight. So all it really required of me was to build a new turnout, the proper turnout. This one got moved back a little bit, so it made this side a little bit straighter, and then it straightened the rest of this line out, this main line out. So this is the junction point where the narrow gauge comes from the yard on the other side to this side. So it really needed to flow a little bit better than it did, and so I bit the bullet and tore it up, and I'm really glad I did, because it looks a lot better. It flows, the trains flow a little bit better through it. Well, quite a bit better through it, actually. And it took out the nasty S curve that I had. So anyway, that's one thing, and that's kind of what got me thinking about the subject today, was, have you had to do that? How many times have you had to tear up track and replace it because you had something wrong with it, or because you just wanted to change something? Or add something? And like I say, and then there again, what kind of track do you like to use?
All of the above.
Yeah.
There's a comment here from Steve Anderson, Steve 87 PSAP. He says, I only strayed a little from my plan. That's pretty good. That's got to be pretty impressive.
Yeah. Well, on my particular layout, I drew up a general idea of what I wanted to do. And that was mainly for space considerations. And then I'm pretty much laying the layout as I go. That's one reason I changed this. This part, and the way I had it before, wasn't on the plan like that. It's just the way I ended up laying it, and I didn't like it, so I changed it. And I like it much better now. And I'm doing that with everything else. Most of the track in the yard is not laid yet, so all of that will be pretty much freelanced as I go. Most of the main line is laid, except for, of course, the upper levels aren't done yet. But most of the main line is laid. All the HO gauge standard stuff is already laid. So, but I found a problem inside the mountain, and I'm not showing you that because it's kind of hard to get in there with the camera and enough light that you can see it. But I've got an elevation change in there that I didn't know I had. Not a big one, but enough that I could have cars coming coupled. So I'm going to have to get in there and try and get the road bed out from under the track and smooth that transition out a little bit more. That ought to be fun. Trying to do it in there. But it's one of those things that's going to have to be done. So
you've got Flex Track in there though, right?
Yeah, it's on Flex Track. I do have Flex Track in there, but I don't know if that particular one is on Flex Track. I think it's on hand laid track. But it's not going to be easy either way because of just where it's at. It's just before it comes out of the portal on the reverse loop on this side. So, yeah, it's going to be hard to get back in there to it. But I'm going to, like I say, I'm going to have to do it because the trains aren't going to run right, you know. And I've got that part set up to where I don't have to mess with that turnout. It goes into the reverse loop, the switch throws, it comes back out, switch goes back all by itself. So, if the train's running and I'm not paying attention to it and I'm doing something else, then I may have a big problem
now,
in there.
Can you file the head of the rail on the part that's higher? Is that possible to file it?
I don't know. You know, I've only looked at it once. When I was in there, I noticed it. And I've run trains on it and they run through it, but I haven't run long trains through there. So I don't know if it would, you know, manifest when I get to a longer train. None of my cars are going to be real long. I'm trying to stay 40 to 50 feet at the most on the standard gauge. So, because it's, you know, the era I'm in, they didn't have real long cars back then. So, like auto racks and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
I wouldn't really be filing the top of the rail, mostly because then you reduce your rail height, and then you're going to have flange issues if you you start doing that.
Very possible, and I've only got code 70 in there, so you know, if you start doing that, you end up with not much rail. Yeah, so that's probably not going to be an option. Now, I have filed some if I get, you know, before I was trimming the rails when I put them together. Before I was doing that, I would have to come back sometimes and file one side so I didn't get that hump in it, and it was only because it wasn't either spiked well enough on one side or the other, you know, and then I soldered it and it was there. And sometimes I go back and resolder it and push it down if I can. If I couldn't, then I would file the top. But now when I get ready to lay rail, I've showed this before. That one doesn't have it on it. Let me find one here that's got it on there. How well you can see this. Get this over here in front of you, where my shirt's behind it. This is code 70 rail, and what I do is I'll cut the flange base of the rail back at a 45 from the joint. I'll file the stuff off the bottom so I don't have any burrs on the bottom, and then on the top of the rail, I'll put a slight, you know, just a few strokes with the file down at that angle, and then also just a little bit on the inside of the rail. Put about a 45 on there with just a few strokes of the file, not real big joints, but what that does, it keeps any of the flanges from picking any joined rail. The worst it does is it gives me a little clickety clack as the wheels go over, which is not a bad thing. Yeah, not a bad thing. So, but I started doing that on all my rail. Any rail I put in, I'll file the ends like that so that I get a little smoother roll through it, and it seems to work really well that way. So I will continue to do that. I even do it with Flex Track.
There's a comment here from Al Ma. He says, "I don't have a plan unless you consider laying it down and pulling it up a plan."
Hey, well, you know, do what you got to do.
Anfield Road Layout in the Loft says, I hope I've pronounced that right. I have Flex Track, and you lay track it all down now to clean the track. Not 100% sure what he's talking about there. I think he's talking about how he's cleaning it.
flex track and unless he's asking what we're using to clean the track.
What do you use to clean the track, Claude?
Well, after I paint the rail, and I do that with the camo brown spray paint's all I use. It works pretty good. To get the paint off, I usually, I'll spray a little bit at a time, and then before it dries, I'll come back with a paper towel on a wood block or something and just go over the track, over the top of the track. That gets 90% of it. And then if I've got any stubborn spots that I need to get off, I'll take a bright boy to it and go pretty easy with it. I'm not a big fan of using a bright boy, but there are places where you need to use it. And if the paint dries, you almost have to, unless you want to come back with some strong solvent, which I'd much rather use the bright boy than a real strong solvent. I will probably use isopropyl alcohol or something like that in my cleaning cars. I've got the CMX car for my standard gauge, and I've got the centerline roller car, which is right over here. I can show you that. This is a narrow gauge car. Let's see if you can see that. I can hold this up, maybe you can see it better. And it's got this little brass roller that goes in the middle. It just sits in there, and then it pulls out along the rail. And does pretty decent job. But that's after you get your track good and clean the first time. I will also use paper towel or like an old t-shirt or something on a wood block with the isopropyl alcohol on that and rub it by hand if it's real dirty. But the track cleaning cars to me are more of a maintenance than they are of what am I trying to think? Of a first time cleaning application. I wouldn't rely on those to get your track clean, and especially in places like inside a tunnel or something like that. You want to clean that first. Once you know it's clean, then you run those as a good maintenance and keep them clean, especially if you're not running a lot of trains all the time.
Bernard wanted to know if you've ever used the washer trick to burnish your track.
No, I haven't. I know a lot of people do, and that's not a bad idea. It's all what you're comfortable with. I think some of it gets blown out of proportion sometimes. Some people really don't like bright boys because it puts microscopic scratches on your rail and it holds dirt. Well, most of us would never notice that. And if you stay with a good cleaning regimen, maintenance, regularly, you won't have any problem, even if you got scratches on the rail. So, but I've got scratches on my tops of my frogs and stuff like that. Will have scratches in them because when I'm building them, I'll take it, and sometimes I get solder up there, and I'll have to file that down.
Yeah.
But the trains run over just fine. They don't seem to care at all. But there again, it's maintenance on it and keeping it maintained while you're doing it. I was going to spike some of this water.
Sorry, what do you use, Steve, to clean your track?
Well, I use alcohol and a rag, or I'll use a 400 grit sandpaper too. It's really fine. And I use what do you call them? The graphite pencils.
That's interesting.
That actually works a little bit. You don't want to use a lot of it, but if you use it sparingly, that graphite works really good.
Well, yeah, the graphite's a good conductor of electricity, so that works good. Another thing I've heard used, and I haven't done it yet, but for that very thing is that no-ox. It's an electrical contact grease. I don't know if it's grease or oil. I don't have any, so I don't know for sure, but I've heard it works really, really well.
I actually don't clean my track that much unless I'm doing a lot of scenery, which I have been. But I generally don't have to. A lot of times you just run your trains.
Well, you run quite a few trains. You run trains all the time. I'm not to that stage where I can run a lot of trains right now, but I don't worry too much about the tracker at the moment as far as being clean. I know what I'm going to do with it once I get to that stage. But with as big as this layout is and doing it in sections, I'm not running trains full through, from all the way around. Not not yet anyway. I will be eventually.
Just getting off a little bit off topic here. Steve, have you had a chance to attempt Uncle Wilmer's challenge?
I did Sparky's challenge. What was Wilmer's?
Uncle Wilmer's challenge, which was your best pulling locomotive and trainers that'll pull.
Oh, and how many it'll pull up? Well, that's the problem with mine is with the grades I've got, I can only do, probably 10 or 12 cars per locomotive because of the grades. But a flat, I mean, if it's flat out, I could probably pull a ton. But no, I haven't done it because I wouldn't be able to pull very many cars. I did do Sparky's challenge, his caboose challenge. I'll be uploading that one. I don't even remember how many I got on it.
And I haven't done either one of them, mainly because I don't have. I could probably pull more cars than I could get in my reverse loops. My reverse loops are a 25-inch radius, but I know I've got a F3 A and B set that are both powered, and I know they pull more cars than I can get in that loop. So I haven't tried. I haven't done it, but I need to look at the caboose challenge because I've got a bunch of cabooses I can put on there.
I can't do the caboose challenge because I don't have cabooses.
I've got a whole box of them I bought that were built by someone, and they had a good price on them, and I bought the whole mess of them. And I know some of them need some work, but they're in a box with everything else that I've bought.
Well, the biggest challenge for the caboose challenge for me was trying to get them to work. A lot of them I've never run before because they're I just need to get rid of them actually and sell them. But most of them were derailing. I probably had to do it for 30 minutes before I could get the train to go around the layout without derailing.
Yeah. I'm going to have cabooses on mine for the era that I'm running. Either cabooses or observation cars, at the end of a passenger train. But I will be running cabooses on mine. So that's why I bought those. But I also have a lot of caboose kits that I'll be building some. But I wanted some to have to run once I get to that point before I get my kits built.
Getting back onto topic, there's a point here from Bernard C. He says, "No locks is good for corrosion protection. I use a lot for dissimilar wire, i.e. copper, aluminium."
That's
what
aluminum,
is no
you
lock?
and me, right?
What's no locks? I have no idea what that is.
No ox. It's a paste, or I don't know what. Maybe they can explain what it is. Oh, no locks.
No locks.
Sounds like something for stomach problems.
Yeah. It sounds like it's very similar to the no-ox that I was talking about. And I heard about that from Ron Marsh. He was showing doing some on his, and he said it works really well. Once you get the track clean, you put that on there, and it helps keep it clean. Mm-hmm. But it also, you put a little bit on there, and the train will just, pick it up on the wheels and take it around, and it helps for the electrical connectivity.
Connectivity.
Yeah, one of those words. I need my
conductivity.
Conductivity.
Conductivity. There you go. Thank you.
And Allison, it's aluminum, not aluminium.
I know. That's what I was saying. She says that, and it's like, wait a minute.
Well, I'm in Australia, so we say it the Australian way, or the British way, probably.
Y'all drive on the wrong side of the road too. So.
Well,
We drive on the correct side of the road, thank you.
one here. Not sure what. Okay. I'm using, of course, a track gauge here, a 3-point track gauge for spiking this rail. But I always come back with the NMRA gauge and check it too, because this is much closer tolerance than these little track gauges are that slide down the rail.
Hey, Allison, why don't you make Claude bigger so we can see what he's doing?
I can do that.
Nobody needs to see me. No, not you. There we go.
No, I have to. When I click the button, it automatically goes to me because I'm the first one on the screen. So that's why I've got to swap people around.
Yeah,
that way now I can.
Oh, go ahead, guys.
I was just saying now I can see you.
Well, you probably don't need one. Yeah, you probably don't need a track gauge with not one of these anyway. And this is an HO size here, but sits on the rail. I'm sorry?
I've seen those before.
Yeah, this is one from Fast Tracks. They don't even offer it anymore, but it's a really nice one. A little heavier duty. Not that you need something heavy duty. You just need something that you can slide down the rail as you're spiking and keep it engaged. But I always come back with the NMRA gauge and check that, because this is what most of your trains are on. And plus you can gauge your wheel sets. It's also got track side clearances on it, your flange ways for any of your guardrails or frogs. This is a must-have tool for good track work, regardless of what kind you're using.
No, I got a question.
Even if you've got commercial turnouts and stuff, it's not unusual for those to be out of gauge. And you wouldn't think they would be, so you don't check them. And then you're always having a problem with a turnout, but you check it with a gauge, and chances are that's why the train's coming off.
Especially Shinohara.
Yeah, well, any of them. I had, back in the day, my Atlas turnouts, I had some that I had to fix. And they had the insult frogs on them. And I ended up just taking a hairdryer and heating it up a little bit and moving it enough that I could get it to run better. But on my turnouts that I do, I'll have a place, not turnouts necessarily, but any place on the track. If it's derailing all the time, 9 times out of 10, I've put the gauge too close. I've pinched the rails together, and it makes one of the wheels ride up over the top of the rail.
I got a question for you, Claude. When you're laying and you're using your track gauge, do you use just one as you're spiking? Because I remember when I was laying HO track, we always had probably 3 or 4 way ahead of where you were spiking. So,
I usually just use one because I'm going pretty slow. I'm just doing it myself.
Mm-hmm.
If you had more people working on it, yeah, you would definitely have to have 3 or 4. I'm not real worried about, keeping the track super straight.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is not a concern. I want to keep it straight enough that it runs well. But if you go up to see any of the narrow gauge trains and you get down on the line on the track and look down the line, you go, there's no way in the world the train's going to run down that.
Right.
Because it's the rails. Not only are the rails not straight, they're doing this, but they're also doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why when they had the K27s first came over to the narrow gauge in Colorado, they called them mud hens, because that's how they looked like they were wobbling down the track.
Right.
And they do. If you ever watch one of those videos of the steam trains there running down the track from the point of view of, say, coming to a crossing and they're shooting back down the line, looking at the train, you can see the thing just waddling like crazy. And you'd think, man, that's going to come off the track, but it doesn't, because the gauge is right.
Anfield Road layout in the loft says, nice layout you got there and working on. Keep up the good work.
Well, thank you. I didn't really come up here this morning. I was telling Allie and Steve that I didn't really come up here and do the show from up here this morning to show the layout off, but it was more to just talk about the track work and stuff.
There's a reply here for you, Steve. Bernard C says, Steve, it's used a lot in household commercial main power boxes. It coded you use alum wire, but keep copper clean of green. LOL.
Okay, got it.
Keeps you from tarnishing, yeah. The nice thing about these track gauges when you're hand spiking too is you can run them back and forth after you put it on there, and you can feel where it's out of gauge somewhat, if it's quite a bit. But you can also tell if your spikes are too high or not, because if you don't get your spikes down far enough, of course your flanges on your wheels are going to hit them and derail that way. But Jerry showed up in the pickup, brought me some more spikes.
Good for you, Jerry.
But I enjoy doing it this way. It's to me, it's part of the hobby. It's kind of like building the turnouts or building a kit. I like doing that kind of stuff and working with my hands. And I had plastic models when I was a kid and that sort of thing. Built RC airplanes and stuff from plans, and really enjoy that part of it. And so to me, this is even probably more so than running the trains. I like running the trains. Don't get me wrong. That's the main reason for doing a layout, but I like everything that goes into it.
Well, I like the look of the hand-laid turnouts. They just look so much better.
Oh,
yes, blend in.
Yeah, well, you've done some, so
Yeah.
I 100% agree, Steve. Those hand-laid turnouts you did for your layout look fantastic.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but clogs are fantastic. Well, the other thing about the hand lay, about building your own like that is you can tweak them. You can do special ones. Mm-hmm. I've got a couple right here that have no moving points on them. The standard goes straight through, and the narrow gauge comes off. They're coming off. Both of them come off a dual gauge track. And then they split off into single gauge on each one of them.
Well, my biggest issue I have with the hand-built turnouts is that the ones that you do in the beginning don't work as good as the ones you do later on. So I've got some of the first ones that are already installed. They're not working 100%. They're good, but short of pulling out and replacing them with new ones, because there's a learning curve to building them.
Well, Steve, if you get in there and look at them real close, and what I like to check them with a lot of times is just a set of trucks. Mm-hmm. I keep an HO and N scale, or HO and HON3 truck with me, and I'll roll these over the rail, because what these will show you, they're lightweight enough that if you've got any bumps in there, it's going to pop off the track. So that's the first thing I check it with, past the gauge, or past the NMRA gauge, and I'll run them by there. And if they're going to jump the track, they'll jump the track.
Well, my biggest problem area is the frogs, especially because with the end scale and number 5 turnouts, you have a bigger gap at the front point. And the wheels tend to drop down in there, and that's kind of an issue that I corrected by, a little bit of, glue or epoxy in there to build it up and then file it. But that's the biggest problem I have.
I saw somewhere, and it must have been on eBay, because that's where I look most of the time for stuff, but somebody had come up with photo etched metal, the fit into the gap of the frog, right ahead of the frog, to make them look more like a cast frog, like a real frog would be. Would be a good idea. I don't know who has them. I don't remember seeing anything on there that they sold them. I think this guy made his own, and I don't know how tedious that would be, but I came back in, like when I built this one, I tried to get that frog point down in there just as deep as I could and still get my flange clearance. And it seems to have worked really well. In fact, I can move this around. I can show you. I say I can show you.
Because that's where my
hopefully you can
issue
see
is
this,
with frogs.
right? Well, you can see how far down in there I got the point. And is that showing up?
Yep.
Right here. This one's not quite as far. You can tell the difference there. But I'll lay them in there and do that. And if they don't work, then I'll take them back out. But some of them, like Steve was talking about, I'll have to unplug here. Oh, here we go. Some of them that Steve was talking about, I can get out of the light right here on this curve turnout. I didn't get the point in there near far enough. And so what I filled it in right here with, I think I just used wood glue, I think, on this particular one. And then you can take the point of a small file and rake it down to where you need it to be, and that makes that roll through there without that wheel wanting to drop down in that gap. But since now I'm trying to make the frogs a little tighter when I first make them. Sorry for making everybody sick there. But it's a learning curve, like you said, Steve. You figure it out after trying to do stuff, and that's another thing I like doing with the layout or anything that I'm doing is when I come across a problem, trying to find a way to fix that problem and do it so that I can replicate it again, later on.
Problem solving.
Yeah, problem solving. I love doing that. Always have. Had to do it when I was plumbing, and and I do it now all the time too with what I do, home repair. But it comes up in this. It came up in my airplane modeling. Trying to get something to look like something without using store-bought stuff. Go to the hardware store and build things from stuff that's at the hardware store. I did that with my airplanes all the time. But
Bernard,
go ahead.
I was just saying, Bernard C says, chat, yeah, everyone hates brass these days, but that 90% of what I got, 350 feet now, so humidity, of course, think I should coat, track, or paint be good enough? Sorry, long-winded.
He's talking about brass track rail.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking he's talking about.
Yeah. Oh, I remember those days when that's all they had pretty much. Because I remember getting a nickel. I had a bunch of brass when I first started years ago.
Steel track.
And I got a turnout, an Atlas turnout that was nickel silver, and I put it in, and you talking about looking like a duck out of water with all that brass rail, and then put in a nickel silver. And of course, I wasn't painting my rail at that time. But yeah, painting will help keep corrosion down for sure. I would think one of the something like No-Ox or the one that who was it talking about that other stuff? Bernard. Yeah, all that kind of stuff should help immensely with keeping your tarnish down or corrosion down on your track. The other thing that works one of the best things you can do for the top of your track is run trains all the time.
Yeah.
Keep the wheels on your stuff clean, and then if you're running it all the time, it'll keep it polished. You won't have to poke in there as much.
I got a question I want to throw out the chat, and Steve Anderson, you might know it, and Claude and I, we were talking about that before the show, is painting your rail. Because I want to paint the side of my rail because I got some of the scenery brown on it when I was doing the trestle, and it actually looked really good. So what's people's best method for painting your rail if you do it? Claude said a paint pen.
Paint pen's one thing you can do, especially if it's already installed.
Yeah, well, everything's installed, and I got a lot to do.
You can do it with a paintbrush too, but man, God, that's one thing I don't like doing is stuff that's real tedious.
I wonder if anybody makes something for painting the side of rail. It maybe does Walthers or something like that make it.
Woodland Scenics makes
okay.
Makes paint pens for painting rail. So you could look into that. They probably have more colors actually than what the hobby shop's going to have. That was the one drawback to Hobby Lobby. They didn't have the color I wanted. So I just used what they had.
Mm-hmm.
I just haven't used it very much because I'm not real crazy about the color. But the main thing I use is just camo spray paint, the dark brown, and I think it looks really good, especially after it's ballasted and you put scenery around it. You don't see much of it anyway, you know, tops of the ties and stuff. And if you want to go back in and you know, do some of the ties and stuff with some other colors, you can. But I've seen people spend hours and hours. Steve Brown in one of his videos doing end scale stuff. He went in and painted, you know, not every other tie, but he'd go in and randomly put the colors on the ties. And I'm like, yeah, it looks really good, but man, that's a lot of ties on an end scale layout. And he's got one kind of like mine, you know, it's pretty good size. So it takes a lot of time to do that. I'm not into that so much, so I'm not going to do that. But, you know, if you wanted to, especially if you had an end scale or modular setup, you know, where you've only got one or two modules, yeah, you can go in and really detail it out. You know, a little switching layout, something like that, where you don't have a lot of track. That's where I would spend more time making the track look really, really good and, you know, lived in, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
There's a comment here from Uncle Wilmer. My hat is off to you, Claude. I don't have the patience to hand lay the track. I don't like laying manufactured track.
Well, yeah, if you don't like doing track, you don't want to hand spike it. I did it because I saw it years ago in Model Railroader magazine. Saw some guy from England that had done this incredibly complex track work in this yard, and slip switches and double slips and, you know, crossovers and all this stuff was just crammed right together. I mean, he had it. I don't know how he did it without jigs and stuff, and he may have built his own jigs. But I was duly impressed seeing that, and I thought, you know, that looks really good. And I thought, but boy, hand spiking, that's a lot of ties you got to spike. And I don't spike every tie. I spike depending on where it's at on the layout. Some, you know, most of these straight runs, there's probably 1.5 inches, 2 inches between each spike. And that's more than enough to hold it, especially once it gets ballasted. The ballast is going to hold a lot of that stuff in place anyway. So you don't have to do every tie. Now, some places I'll come in, like right in here where I've got these two turnouts back to back, and it's dual gauge. You know, I've got it spiked 1/2 inch apart here. Not every tie, but maybe every other or every third tie. But there's a joint there, and so that helps hold that joint straight. Doesn't let it kink out. So I'll put more tie and more spikes in there. But you don't have to do every tie. And I've seen guys do every tie. That would really be tedious.
That would be a lot. Almar, I got a question for you. You said you use paint pens. You get those from Woodland Scenics, and also, what is a pan pastel to do? You said you use pan pastels for rail and ties. What is that?
I think Shannon uses pan pastels, I mean.
Bernard C. also has a recommendation here for you, Steve. He says he uses his Badger airbrush.
Yeah, actually, that was another question I was. Don't you get a lot of overspray on the ballast?
I guess you could probably thin it out.
Well, I think he's probably thinking before you put it, you know, have it ballasted and stuff.
Well, see, that's my problem. It's when it's in.
Yeah.
You have to do it.
Yeah, you're always going to have to use a brush or a paint, paint pen
Yeah.
to keep it neat enough. I don't see how you could spray that with ballast already there.
Yeah.
I mean, you could, but you're going to paint your ballast.
Well, speaking of manufactured track and manufactured items, stuff that you can buy, guess what else you can buy? You can buy stuff from our Teespring store. You can get mugs, you can get pillows, you can get t-shirts. I got a new one just yesterday. You can get sweatshirts. If I can hold it up right. There we go. So don't forget, you can get stuff from the Teespring store. We also still have the key rings, which are just the little rail key rings, aluminium and steel. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon as well. If you want to make sure that you're around for Random Beans episodes. There was going to be one last week, but we couldn't get together, so maybe this week. We'll see how we go.
Yes, Jerry. I would definitely recommend that you paint before you ballast. paint before you do anything.
Yeah, if you're going to paint your rail, see, like I've painted this already. That's the easiest way to do it. And even if you're going to come back in and highlight like ties and stuff like that and put some other stuff on it, I would do this first, put the basic brown on there. And then if you want to go from there, put some rust in here and there and some weathering on some of the ties and stuff like that, you can do that. But this gives you a good base to do that with. It covers the raw tie up or the plastic, either one, whatever you're using. And then you can put more paint on, or chalks, or whatever you're going to use to weather it with. I think it's just an excellent way to do it, and it doesn't take much.
I was just going to say, there's some answers here for you, Steve, from Almar. The pan pastels, I assume, are like a powder, he says here.
Okay.
And he says you put it on with a brush.
Yeah, they look like, they usually come in a like a round deal with 5 or 6 colors in it. And what they look like to me, and I've never had one in my hand, but on looking at them online, it almost looks like a woman's compact.
Oh, okay.
Where they put the old base makeup that your mom used to put on and keep in her purse.
Sure.
That's what it looks like. So I'm assuming it's kind of like that. It's just a pastel in a pan. And you put it on with a brush. Wipe
and
it out.
where are those available? Where are those available at?
There's some of the train shops have them.
I don't
Almar
have train
saying
shops.
he gets his off Amazon.
Yeah, Amazon would be a good place. Woodland Scenics, I think, offers their, some colors on theirs. Now, Woodland Scenics can be a little more expensive on some of their stuff, but.
And even Uncle Wilmer says he likes pan pastels. They're very easy to use and are foolproof for fools like me.
Well, that's what I need then.
Yeah, well, it's like anything else. I've even used regular pastels or chalks. Take them. You can take the chalk. In fact, I've got them down here. If I can get them out of there. Yeah. These right here. And you can see there's a wide variety of color in there. I got these from Hobby Lobby, I think. Excuse me. I don't know what I paid for them. But I can take this out and then take my X-Acto knife and just scratch it out into my little plastic palette and put a little alcohol with it. And you can do it that way, or you can use it dry. Works real well too. And these are just a pastel chalk. And these are a lot cheaper than the pan pastels. That's the only bad thing I don't like about the pan pastels is they're expensive.
Now, how does it work with the alcohol? I never heard that.
You can use it, just mix it up, and you're really just making a stain or a paint. It just colors the alcohol.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, I saw that used. Who was it? Trackside modeling. Trackside. What's his name? He's back east, and he hasn't done a lot of videos here lately, but he used to. That the same place I got the touch toggles idea from.
See, isn't that great? You learn stuff every day. See, that's what I'm gonna do.
And I can't remember the guy's name. He does photography, I think, is his main business. And he does this sort of thing right here. But most of his are back east in Pennsylvania and that's in West Virginia. Seems like that. So I didn't use his, but he does photographic backdrops.
Okay.
Trackside Scenery is the name of his channel. So you might look him up. He did one where he did a real small portable layout in I think it was an HO, but it's supposed to be a real old layout. And he went in and
I'm going to try your method, Claude, because I got some chalks. So
yeah,
let's see how that.
Allie had his name.
It was actually Wilmer.
Oh, it was Wilmer?
Wilmer.
Okay. Well, he's over in Wilmer's area, I think. But yeah, Joey Ricard. Yeah, he's pretty good at it. He's fun to watch too. I wish he was still doing a lot more videos, but he does. He's got a couple of videos on this little layout that he did where he goes into doing the track and some of the other weathering that he does and how he does it and how easy it is and he's got some really good ideas in there. So that's where I got the alcohol and the chalk idea from.
Well, I'm going to try it right now.
I haven't used it a lot, but I'll use it more on some of the kits that I'm going to build. But also dry, putting chalk on dry, and then you can seal it with a dull coat or something like that. That works really well, and it's easy to do. And if you get too much on there, you can get most of it off.
Bernard C. Says here, hey, I learned how to flatten a bridge by Steve Arnold.
Yeah.
That actually was quite a clever little way you figure that out.
They don't tell you that in the kit. It's like, and I ended up watching a video after that, and his bode too. He did it. He used a heat gun to flatten it out. But that was like, holy crap! Now what do I do?
Well, that's the thing. I want to caution people. I talked about using a hairdryer to fix a Atlas turnout that I had that wasn't working real great. You want to be real careful using any kind of, especially a heat gun, like a one that you'd use to strip paint with, or I had one that I used to stretch covering on airplanes, but they can put out quite a bit of heat. And if you get them too close, you can ruin something really quick because styrene will not take a lot of heat before it melts.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with the way that turned out. That works really good, Claude.
What's that? Oh,
the alcohol with the chalk.
Yeah. And then it dries pretty quick because it's alcohol just, evaporates off. Yeah. And you can make it as thick as you want. You can make it a wash or you can make it really thick. And it's cheap. It's a lot cheaper than pan pastels. I know that because I think the pan pastels are $40 or more for like 5 colors.
Yeah, that's not going to work on rail, but yeah, that's good. Okay.
Well, he used it on.
Sweet.
I think he was using it on ties and stuff.
I don't know about the ties.
Well, now see, it would work on the painted tie, on the painted rail, Steve. Mm-hmm. That's what I was saying. You go with the basic, the basic brown first. Mm-hmm. Then you come back and you can put that alcohol base over that paint, and you won't hurt the paint, but it'll stick better.
Well, what I did is just to try this, I've got some of these little baby food jars that we had left over from when the little dog was sick and she was eating this baby food. And actually,
I thought you were going to say leftover from your childhood.
Well, actually, I do. I've got. You laugh, but I do. I've got probably 100, 150 that my dad saved. So yeah, I do. But yeah, I was thinking about making up, different colors and keep them in these little baby food jars, because that worked really good. That's a great tip. I like
Yeah,
that.
you'd have to be able to seal that jar really well, because that alcohol sure will.
Well, yeah, that's
evaporate.
because these baby food jars have the seal on them. Yeah, just like that. Yeah,
Bernard C says, sounds like Claude
awesome.
melted some monocoat too.
Oh yeah, yeah. You can burn a hole through it real quick. And I despise monocoat, by the way. My favorite airplane covering was, this is way off topic, but was a product called SolarTex. It was made in the UK. And here about 3 years ago, the father was going to retire, and a company was inquiring on the equipment that they had to buy it. And they said, no, they weren't even going to sell it because it was so old and it would cost so much money to move that it wasn't going to be feasible. So they just quit. They just went out of business. And it was the best covering I'd ever used. It worked really well. But that's off topic.
We do that a lot.
But, well, on that topic, if you see something that you think you might want, when you see it, buy it. If you can, buy it, because it may not be around later when you think,
Especially
you're going to be
on
ready
eBay.
for it. Oh, on eBay, anywhere, in the hobby shop. You never know when the company's going to quit making something. And just because they quit making it doesn't mean somebody else is going to pick it up.
Don't get me started on that. Oddcision, the ones who do those NRs that I just got, guess what? They just released 5 new numbers with different color schemes that they didn't announce with the previous run, so you couldn't pre-order them. So they're, of course, full price. And they said there's only 50 of each number. And day one, I got the email today, day one, 3 of them have already sold out.
Oh, yeah. I have no doubt about that.
It annoys the heck out of me because it doesn't give us any time or chance to save up for it.
Yeah.
Because all the other ones that I bought, I'd saved for. Because I've been waiting 3 years for those. But these ones, they just popped out of nowhere. But that's, again, getting off topic.
Yeah, that's the kind of case where you got to be in the right place at the right time. But it's that way with some old stuff on eBay too. I bought a pair of Valley Central trucks. I didn't know anything about them when I bought them, or these arch bar trucks. When I got them, found out they're all metal and they're sprung. They're fantastic. I shouldn't be telling everybody this because I don't need the HON3s. I do need some more HOs, but they roll really nice. They have, metal wheels on them, insulated axles. And if you find them, it's going to be either used or new old stock. And even if I have found some, they come in a little jewel case, little plastic jewel case with foam. That's how they came originally, or at least the HON3s that I've got came that way. The foam gets stuck to it and everything, and I've got a bunch of them. I'm gonna have to go in there and take apart and clean it all. But they're worth it if you can get them at a good price, because they're fantastic trucks. They're better than micro trains. They're better than KDs, in my opinion. They're just fantastic. Plus, they weigh a little bit because they're all metal, and that's, of course, what I'm using here to check this stuff with. But
I'm guessing you can't get a lot of weight from some of the HON 3.5 stuff, or HON 3 stuff, I should say.
Yeah, and they don't make them anymore. So if you find them, you're going to find, like I say, going to be new old stock or used ones that somebody's selling. They pop up every once in a while on eBay, and I'll buy them if I can get them at a really good price. I've got a whole bunch of the HON3 for all the kits that I have to build, because none of those come with trucks. So I started stocking up on those. But I also have some HO cars that I want to change wheel sets on because they're plastic wheels and they're used and they're just junk anymore. So I need to replace a bunch of them. And
Yeah,
I'm trying to do it with the Central Valleys. Anyway, that's kind of off topic, but kind of not, you know.
Well, having good wheels helps run on track as well, I guess.
Yeah, well, yeah. If you don't have good trucks on your stuff, good stuff on your cars, it's not going to really matter too much on your track work because they're not going to track very well on anything.
That's a fair point.
So, you know, it kind of goes hand in hand. It's kind of like cleaning your track and not cleaning the wheels on your rolling stock and your locomotives. If you got to do both, because if you don't do both, it's just going to make the other one mess up.
Precisely.
So it can be important.
Meanwhile, Steve's over here. He's just fascinated by this new thing he discovered.
Oh, yeah. See, well,
there you go. See?
Yeah, see, that works really good. I like that.
He discovered a thing.
I got a question for chat. You guys, when you lay your track and you put your wire to it, how do you like to attach your wire to your track? I know some people use and I used to do this too years ago, use the rail joiners that had a wire on them. I don't do that anymore. I solder mine straight to the wire. I just drill a hole down the side, bring it up and solder it right to the side of the rail, the outside of the rail. And I see guys trying to put them from underneath so that the wire doesn't show. But once you paint it, you never see those wires. And I use 20 gauge wire. It's pretty good size solid wire for doing that. But it, you know, works for me and it's good enough for me. But
well, when we
I'm curious as to what everybody else does.
When we built the Newcastle layout, we used Pico Flex Track, and we took out the 25 pieces from the box, and every one of those 25 pieces we pre-soldered underneath on the bottom of the rail.
Bottom of the rail.
All the droppers. So, of course, when we laid the track, the droppers were already on there.
The only thing I don't like about that is when you get ready to lay the track and your dropper's in a set position already, right? And you want to drop it right here. Well, that happens to be where you've got a support under there. Now you've got to do some figuring. You've got to either shorten that track so you can get the other side of the support or something like that. So I just put mine down and I do it after it's down.
That's a fair point.
Yeah. For me, it works better. And of course, I'm not working in a club situation where I've got a lot of people doing stuff at the same time. But that's how I do it. I wait till it's down and then do it. But I know a lot of people have said they like soldering underneath. But even my frog juicers, I solder to the side of the guardrail. You know, I try to keep it on the back side of the rail so it's not, you know, seen real easy. But after it's painted with this brown paint, unless you're looking for it, you'll never see it.
It's a fair point. Dave BNSF N-Scale says, just going back to our previous topic, trucks and wheel sets are as important as track work.
Yep.
And I believe Dave BNSF N-Scale and Jack here use rail joiners for their wiring. They wire to the rail joiners.
Mm-hmm. I know a lot of people do that. And that's a viable way of doing it. In fact, they're commercially available, already soldered up.
Atlas do them, I think.
Mm-hmm. It's cheaper to do your own, but if you don't like soldering, then you can buy them. So, but yeah, I guess there's not a lot of different ways of doing that. But like I say, I find that just bringing it up and soldering it right to the side, I'll tin the side of the rail first, and then I bring my wire up and I'll tin the end of the wire and put a 90-degree bend on it, slide it down in, then I just come over and hold it with my pliers to the side of the rail and just touch it to it, and it's done. And then it works pretty well for me. And then I try to keep it cleaned off. In fact, I don't know. I've got this frog wired. I don't know if you can tell that it's wired. And I can see the green insulator. It's the only thing I can see on it, and the insulation on the wire. But that's down between the rails. And you never see it once it's painted. And I get that. Of course, I'm in the light too. Let's see. It's right here. I don't know if that's showing up on there.
Not sure. It looks frozen on my end, but when it plays back, it usually plays back a lot smoother.
Yeah. I don't know if you can see that. I'm trying to look on the, you don't see it, but it's right. Yeah, I lost it now. It's right here.
Jack says, I only power the switches, don't have power lines under the layout. That's interesting.
Well, there you go. That's another way of doing it.
And Steve 87th PSAP says Cato has great wired rail joiners for their tracks.
Do they? Yeah, that's sectional track. So yeah, it would make sense that they would make some for that. I never was a big fan of the track, especially the sectional track that had the ballast on there, so to speak, or the road bed on it, the plastic road bed. I never was a fan of those, but I've seen them put in and look really good, when the scenery around it's done right. But
it is hard to get the scenery to match it.
Yeah,
but
well, there again, if you paint it,
just,
but then I would think ballasting that stuff would be kind of tough to do.
Yeah.
I know some of them have is it Bachman I'm thinking of, maybe?
Bachman
the ballast is actually molded into the road bed. So that to me just looks cheesy. I personally don't like the look of it, but then, a lot of people, that's what they want to put in. That's great. They found something that they like to use and it works for them. Go that way. And if it gives you good track work, that's the one thing about sectional track that snaps together like that. It usually gives you very reliable track work. You don't have to dink with it too much.
Speaking of that, now that is bringing us pretty much to the end of the show. Yeah. If you've got any more questions in the chat there, I can see a couple more coming through. Throw them down into the comments down below, and we'll try and answer them later on down the track. Has anyone got any final things they want to say before we finish up?
That hour went fast.
Yeah, it did.
It did go very fast.
Thanks for coming by, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
I know I didn't get to say hello to everybody in chat because I've got my iPad up here, but hello, good to see you, and y'all have a good week.
Yeah.
And look for us this week because I got a feeling I'll be finally available to do a beans, maybe.
I may or may not, depending on the day. So you guys let me know what day you want to do it.
We'll talk during the week and see what happens.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Well, thanks for hanging out with us. Appreciate it.
So if you want to make sure you're here and around for that, don't forget to hit that bell icon so you get notified when we're going to actually have a beans episode. And it may not necessarily be the same time of day. So keep an eye out. You never know.
Never know.
All right. That's it from me, guys.
You too. Thanks.
Have a good week, and we'll see you then.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.